Welcome to qnawire.
Okay, we are given a bunch of information about a function and we want to sketch a graph that satisfies all of this information. The first three pieces of information are about the first derivative, so that has to do with where we see minimums or maximums and where we see it increasing or decreasing. I'm going to sketch out a rough number line here with all the points they give us, so 0, 2, and 4. Those are our critical points where we're either going to have a maximum or minimum. It tells us that our first derivative is greater than 0, so positive when x is less than 0, or between 2 and 4, which is right here. So those are the areas where our first derivative is positive. And then our first derivative is negative between 0 and 2, and when x is greater than 4. So this tells us that our function is increasing where it's positive, and then it decreases where it's negative, and then increases and decreases. So we can see we're going to have a maximum at 0, a minimum at 2, and a maximum at 4. That gives us a good amount of information. The second part that they tell us is all about our second derivative, which has to do with concavity. And the important points they give us here are 1 and 3. We know our second derivative is positive between 1 and 3. And then our second derivative is negative when it's less than 1 or greater than 3. So when our second derivative is negative, that's when we are concave down. So we're kind of looking like that. And when it's positive, that's when we are concave up, something like that. So here's all the information we're given. I'm going to go ahead and sketch out a graph for this. I'm going to plot my important points. First, I have my 0. That's where I'm expecting to have a maximum. Then my 2, that's where I'm expecting to have a minimum. And 4, that's where I expect to have another maximum. Then my inflection points where it changes concavity are 1 and 3. And it should start off as concave down and then switch to concave up and then back to concave down. So we're going to have some sort of maximum here, some sort of inflection point here, some sort of minimum here, and then another inflection point here, and then some sort of maximum here. I'm just drawing some random points there to give me a sense of what's going on, and then I'm going to attempt to sketch this in. Inflection points are a little hard to do, so I try to make them a little exaggerated just to help myself out. And I didn't really place this maximum here for any specific reason, just to give myself a guideline. As long as my maximum occurs at that 4 value, we should be good. So here's a rough sketch. Let's go back and make sure it meets everything I want it to meet. So we're going to start with our increasing and decreasing. It should be increasing until 0, check. And then decreasing until 2, good. Increasing until 4, and then decreasing after that, which we are good on. So we've met all of those. Then we want to check our concavity, which is kind of the tougher one. It should be concave down until about 1, so roughly right there. And then it switches to concave up until 3, and then goes back to concave down. So I do believe we have met all the requirements. This is only one possible graph. Like I said, the points on there aren't necessarily meaningful in any way. They just represent minimums or maximums. So the minimums or maximums could be a lot higher or lower or stretched out as long as they occur relatively in the same space.